And welcome back to The Wrap. It's potluck time. It's part of the show. We go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day, or in today's case, story of the day. We're going to go on a little bit of a different track tonight. And Rick will be the head chef tonight, and only chef for that matter.
Ooh.
What do you got?
That could be ugly. This horrible situation with this train that unfortunately met with a disaster last night in Philadelphia did leave 7 people dead. Hundreds of people were injured. Thank goodness it appears that only a few of those are critically injured, and hopefully they'll be okay. It's, while we certainly don't want to really think about anything that would politicize this terrible event, you can't help but wonder, as we all follow the news and learn more and more about what might have gone wrong here, did it have to be? Did it have to be? And what we're learning is there was a speed issue here. But what we also learn is that to Congress's benefit, thank goodness they did this, they required that all of these trains have to put a system on which, if it's working properly, would have slowed this train down to the speed limit it was supposed to go automatically. The problem is not all of the tracks. It takes a machine put on the train plus something done to the tracks for it to work properly. We now learn that because of the high cost, not all the tracks in the country have been outfitted with this, and wouldn't you know that this one area was not outfitted with it, and that's why this happened. This brings us to a discussion that I often feel I'm beating a dead horse, but I can't stop because it's so important, and that's the question of American infrastructure. There's a great article that I recommend. It was written by Uwe Reinhardt, who some of you may know from the healthcare world. He wrote in the New York Times a couple years ago talking about how a friend of his from Germany brought his son to the United States because he wanted his son to see what transportation and infrastructure was like in Germany back in the 1960s. And the only place to see it was in the United States. This is a serious problem. This is. We will spend $1.1 billion on Amtrak this year. That's what the Congress is going to allot. That's down, by the way, $250 million from previous years. The comparison, though, is what will get you. China will spend $250 billion this year on rail travel. Think about that. Think about what this means in the long term to our country if we fall so far behind in infrastructure that what must follow follows, and that means our economy falls with it. There's no way around it, I'm afraid. This is one of those things we don't have to argue about. If we don't maintain an intelligent, modern-day infrastructure, our economy cannot stay a first-class economy. It just has never happened and never will happen. How do you do that? It's easy for us to sit here and go, but we don't have any money. And it's true. We have serious money problems. But the one thing that's so counterintuitive, sometimes you have to, all times you have to invest money to make money. I'll bet you everybody watching will agree with that statement. You have to invest money to make money. And yes, we make a terrible mistake when we spend money badly and we waste it and we throw it away. And we throw it away on programs that you don't believe we should be spending on. We should be taking that money to put in infrastructure. But you know what? This country needs over $1 trillion of infrastructure investment, and we don't bring in enough money even if we threw out welfare to pay for that. So there's only one way you can do it. You actually have to borrow. Now that is, oh my God, borrow? How can we borrow any more money? Because if you can borrow at 2%, which is what our government can do, and you can prove that increasing the infrastructure, improving it to a modern day infrastructure like many parts of the world, that will make back more than 2%, and I don't think you'll find an economist anywhere who would disagree that that's what would happen, then it makes sense to do it. So if people could start training their mind on that fundamental business principle, and I'm not saying just start willy-nilly borrowing money to waste it, and if you want to talk about stopping to borrow for other things, it's a discussion we should always be having as Americans. But folks, if you don't get your head around this, none of those other issues are going to matter, because we will become a third world country, and nobody can argue otherwise.
Well, I agree with you 100%, except for the borrowing part, because there is so much pork and so much just
take it all
wasted,
out. You won't have
jaded
enough.
spending,
Take it all out.
ridiculous programs in the National Institutes of Health. I was just in
But
Florida.
But don't do a rant on waste. Let's talk about infrastructure. You're right.
No, but wait a second.
Let me just say this. Take every bit of waste out of the budget, every cent of it, and put it towards infrastructure, you will not have $1 trillion or more to do.
Well, I read the 2010 master plan for the Northeast Corridor for Amtrak, or at least parts of it, and they said $50 billion, and they had plans that
That's
looked
just
like
Amtrak. I'm
fantastic.
talking about all American infrastructure.
Yes, but the accident happened on the Amtrak Northeast Corridor, which is the most crucial corridor for our rail infrastructure in America
It's also-
between New York City and Washington, D.C.
It's also the most profitable within Amtrak. The problem with Amtrak is that all their other lines lose money.
Yes.
So if you invest in Amtrak, you'd have to have some parameters around that. Look, Northeast Corridor is very important. Boston, Washington, Philly, and New York. I've taken it 1,000 times. But the other lines that aren't
But
making money, we got to
just
figure out
limit it
something.
to Amtrak. That's one piece of
Right.
infrastructure.
Okay. Well, good potluck there, Ricky. And when we come back, it's yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap.